I need to tell you something about honesty, and I think this might completely change how you see certain people in your life. There are 3 zodiac signs that operate on a completely different frequency when it comes to truth. These aren't people who occasionally tell white lies or bend the truth to keep the peace. These are individuals who are physically, spiritually, almost cosmically incapable of being dishonest. And if you know someone like this, or if you are one of these signs, you already know exactly what I'm talking about. Here's what I've been noticing lately, and honestly it's been fascinating to observe. In a world where everyone seems to be curating their truth, filtering their reality, saying what people want to hear instead of what they need to hear, these 3 signs stand out like beacons. They're the ones who will tell you your outfit doesn't work. They're the ones who will call out the elephant in the room that everyone else is pretending doesn't exist. They're the ones who lose friendships, job opportunities, and romantic connections because they refuse to compromise on one thing: the truth. And before you think this is just about being blunt or tactless, stay with me, because what I'm about to share goes way deeper than that. This isn't about people who lack social skills or don't know how to be diplomatic. This is about signs whose entire energetic blueprint is wired for authenticity. Their nervous systems literally reject dishonesty. When they try to lie, even small lies, even lies that would make life easier, their bodies rebel. They feel physically uncomfortable. Some of them get headaches. Others feel this tightness in their chest. It's like their soul is screaming, no, we don't do that here. Now if you've been feeling lately like you can't keep pretending anymore, like you're exhausted from saying things you don't mean or hiding what you really think, there's a specific reason that's happening, and I'm going to explain exactly what it means later in this video. But first, you need to understand why these 3 signs are the way they are. Because this isn't a personality quirk. This is cosmic programming. The universe designs certain signs to be truth-tellers. Not because it's easy, not because it makes them popular, but because without them, without these people who refuse to participate in collective delusion, we'd all be lost in a fog of comfortable lies. These are the signs that hold up the mirror. The ones who say what everyone else is thinking but won't say. The ones who value integrity over likability every single time. And here's what really gets my attention. These 3 signs don't just tell the truth to other people. They demand truth from themselves. They're the ones doing the deep inner work, facing their own shadows, admitting their own flaws. They hold themselves to the same brutal standard of honesty they hold everyone else to. Does that resonate? Because I think that's what makes them so powerful. They're not hypocrites. They're not pointing fingers while hiding their own mess. They're living in radical authenticity. And that authenticity is contagious. But let me be real with you about something. This level of honesty comes with a cost. These signs pay a price for their truth-telling. They lose people. They get called harsh, mean, too intense. They watch others get ahead by playing politics while they stay stuck because they won't play the game. And sometimes, late at night, they wonder if it's worth it. If maybe life would be easier if they could just learn to bite their tongue, to smile and nod, to tell people what they want to hear. But here's the thing, and this was a huge realization for me. They can't. It's not that they won't compromise on honesty. It's that they literally cannot. Their wiring won't allow it. And once you understand that, once you see that this isn't a choice they're making but a fundamental part of who they are, everything about these signs starts to make sense. So which 3 signs am I talking about? Which signs carry this burden and gift of compulsive honesty? I'm going to break down each one in detail. And I promise you, by the end of this video, you're going to see these signs, and maybe yourself, in a completely different light. The first sign is Sagittarius. And honestly, if you know a Sagittarius, you're probably not surprised. But what most people don't understand about Sagittarius' honesty is where it comes from. This isn't just about being blunt or saying whatever pops into their head. Sagittarius is ruled by Jupiter, the planet of truth, wisdom, and higher knowledge. And Jupiter doesn't do small talk. Jupiter doesn't do surface level pleasantries. Jupiter wants to cut through the noise and get to what's real. Sagittarius sees dishonesty as a form of disrespect. When you lie to them, even a small lie, even a lie of omission, they feel it as a personal insult. Because to them, truth is sacred. Truth is the foundation of everything meaningful. How can you have a real relationship with someone if you're not being real with each other? How can you grow, evolve, become better if you're operating on false information? I've watched Sagittarius people blow up their entire lives rather than live a lie. They'll quit jobs where they're asked to be fake. They'll end relationships where they have to pretend. They'll walk away from opportunities that require them to compromise their integrity. And from the outside, it looks reckless. It looks like they're sabotaging themselves. But from the inside, from their perspective, they're saving themselves. Because living a lie, even a comfortable lie, even a profitable lie, feels like dying slowly. Here's what I find so interesting about Sagittarius' honesty. It's not mean-spirited. They're not trying to hurt you. In fact, most of the time, they genuinely believe they're helping you. They think they're doing you a favor by telling you the truth that no one else will tell you. Your business idea has flaws. Your relationship isn't working. You're settling for less than you deserve. They say these things because they care. Because they want you to see reality clearly so you can make better choices. But here's where it gets complicated. Not everyone wants that level of honesty. Not everyone is ready to hear the truth, especially when it's uncomfortable. And Sagittarius doesn't always have the best timing or delivery. They'll tell you your presentation was terrible right before you go on stage. They'll point out that you're gaining weight at a family dinner. They'll announce that your partner is wrong for you in front of your partner. The truth is there. The truth is valid. But the execution, that's where Sagittarius sometimes struggles. And I think this is where Sagittarius pays the biggest price for their honesty. People start avoiding them. Friends stop sharing things with them because they don't want the brutal feedback. Family members leave them out of conversations because they're worried about what they'll say. Romantic partners feel like they're constantly being critiqued. And Sagittarius ends up lonely, wondering why people can't handle the truth, not realizing that it's not the truth people can't handle. It's the way it's being delivered. But here's what I really want you to understand about Sagittarius. Their honesty comes from a place of optimism. They believe in people's potential. They believe that if you just see the truth clearly, you can fix anything, improve anything, become anything. They're not tearing you down. They're trying to build you up by showing you where the foundation is cracked. Does that make sense? The challenge for Sagittarius is learning that truth without compassion can be cruel. That honesty without timing can be destructive. That being right doesn't always mean you should speak. And the Sagittarius people who figure this out, who learn to balance their truth-telling with emotional intelligence, they become incredibly powerful. Because then they're not just honest. They're wise. They know when to speak and when to stay silent. They know how to deliver hard truths in ways people can actually receive them. If you're a Sagittarius watching this, I want you to know something. Your honesty is a gift. The world needs people who won't participate in collective delusion. But your gift becomes even more powerful when you learn to wield it with care. When you ask yourself not just is this true, but is this helpful? Is this kind? Is this the right time? Because the goal isn't just to speak truth. The goal is to speak truth in a way that actually creates positive change. The second sign that never compromises on honesty is Scorpio. And this one might surprise some of you. Because Scorpio has a reputation for being secretive, mysterious, hard to read. And that's true. Scorpio absolutely keeps secrets. But here's the distinction, and this is crucial. Scorpio keeps their own secrets. They guard their inner world fiercely. But when it comes to calling out lies, exposing deception, demanding truth from others, Scorpio is relentless. Scorpio is ruled by Pluto, the planet of transformation, death, and rebirth. And Pluto doesn't do surface level anything. Pluto wants to dig deep, to uncover what's hidden, to expose what's rotting beneath the surface. Scorpio can smell a lie from a mile away. They pick up on micro expressions, tone shifts, energy changes. You cannot fool a Scorpio. You can't try. But they'll know. They always know. And here's what makes Scorpio's relationship with honesty so intense. They don't just want truth. They demand it. They will interrogate you. They will ask follow-up questions. They will sit in uncomfortable silence until you crack and tell them what's really going on. Because to Scorpio, dishonesty isn't just annoying. It's a betrayal. It's a violation of trust. And once you lie to a Scorpio, once you break that trust, it's almost impossible to get it back. I've seen Scorpios end decades-long friendships over a single lie. Not because the lie itself was that big but because the lie revealed something deeper. It revealed that the person was willing to deceive them. And if they're willing to deceive them once, they'll do it again. Scorpio doesn't give second chances when it comes to dishonesty. They cut you off completely. And from the outside, it looks harsh, unforgiving, extreme. But from Scorpio's perspective, they're protecting themselves. Because they know that people who lie to you don't respect you. And Scorpio would rather be alone than be disrespected. Here's what I find fascinating about Scorpio honesty. It's strategic. Unlike Sagittarius, who blurts out truth without thinking, Scorpio calculates. They know the truth. They've known it for a while. But they wait. They watch. They gather more information. And then, when the moment is right, when it will have maximum impact, they strike. They expose the lie. They reveal what they know. And it's devastating because they've been sitting on this truth, letting you think you got away with it. And then boom, they lay it all out. This makes Scorpio incredibly intimidating. People are afraid to lie to them because they know Scorpio will find out. And when Scorpio finds out, there will be consequences. Scorpio doesn't just call you out privately. If you've wronged them publicly, they'll expose you publicly. If you've lied to them in a group setting, they'll correct the record in front of everyone. They believe in accountability. They believe that if you're going to be dishonest, you should face the social consequences of that dishonesty. But here's where Scorpio's honesty gets complicated. Because while they demand brutal honesty from everyone else, they're not always forthcoming themselves. They'll call out your lies while keeping their own cards close to their chest. They'll interrogate you about your secrets while revealing nothing about their own. And this creates a power imbalance in relationships. It feels like Scorpio gets to know everything about you while you know almost nothing about them. And I think this is where Scorpio pays the price for their approach to honesty. People feel exposed around them, vulnerable, like they're being studied, analyzed, judged. And while Scorpio isn't necessarily judging, they are observing. They're taking mental notes. They're building a complete psychological profile of you. And that level of scrutiny, even when it comes from a place of wanting to understand, can feel invasive. The challenge for Scorpio is learning that demanding honesty from others while withholding your own truth creates distance. That real intimacy requires mutual vulnerability. That if you want people to be honest with you, you have to be willing to be honest with them. Not just about facts, but about feelings, fears, insecurities. The Scorpios who figure this out, who learn to balance their need for truth with their need for self-protection, they build incredibly deep, authentic relationships. Because then they're not just exposing lies, they're creating space for real connection. If you're a Scorpio watching this, I want you to consider something. Your ability to see through deception is a superpower. But that superpower becomes even more powerful when you use it not just to protect yourself, but to help others see their own truth. When you create safety for people to be honest instead of fear. When you lead with your own vulnerability instead of demanding theirs first. Because the goal isn't just to catch people in lies. The goal is to build relationships where lies aren't necessary in the first place. The third sign that never compromises on honesty is Aries. And this might be the most misunderstood of the three. Because when people think of Aries, they think of impulsiveness, aggression, that fiery energy that charges forward without thinking. And yes, all of that is true. But what most people miss is that underneath all that fire, underneath all that action, there's an almost childlike commitment to truth that's absolutely unshakable. Aries is ruled by Mars, the planet of war, courage, and direct action. And Mars doesn't do subtlety. Mars doesn't do manipulation. Mars doesn't do hidden agendas. When Aries wants something, they say it. When Aries feels something, they express it. When Aries thinks something is wrong, they call it out immediately. There's no filter, no calculation, no strategic planning, just pure, unfiltered truth delivered with the force of a battering ram. Here's what makes Aries' honesty so unique. It's innocent, unlike Sagittarius, who tells the truth because they believe in higher principles. Or Scorpio, who demands truth because they've been burned by lies. Aries tells the truth because it genuinely doesn't occur to them to do anything else. Lying feels complicated. Lying requires you to remember what you said, to keep track of different versions of reality, to manage other people's perceptions. And Aries doesn't have the patience for any of that. The truth is simple. The truth is direct. The truth gets you where you need to go faster. I've watched Aries people get themselves into so much trouble because they just cannot keep their mouths shut. They'll tell their boss exactly what they think of a terrible idea in the middle of a meeting. They'll announce to their entire family that they think someone's life choices are a disaster. They'll text their crush at 2 in the morning saying, "I like you, do you like me back?" Because waiting and playing games feels like torture. And sometimes this works out beautifully. Sometimes their directness is refreshing, attractive, exactly what the situation needed. But other times, it blows up in their face spectacularly. The thing about Aries' honesty is that it's completely devoid of malice. They're not trying to hurt you. They're not trying to embarrass you. They're not even trying to prove a point. They're just saying what's true in this moment, right now, without thinking about consequences or how it might land or what it might cost them. And this gets them labeled as rude, tactless, insensitive. People think Aries doesn't care about feelings. But that's not accurate. Aries cares deeply about feelings. They just value honesty more. Here's what I've noticed about Aries in relationships. They cannot stand passive-aggressive behavior. They cannot stand hints and implications and expecting them to read between the lines. If you're upset with an Aries, you need to tell them directly. If you want something from an Aries, you need to ask for it clearly. Because they operate in a world of explicit communication. And they assume everyone else does too. When you're indirect with them, when you expect them to pick up on subtle cues, they genuinely don't understand what you want. And then they get frustrated because from their perspective, why didn't you just say what you meant? This creates a lot of conflict in Aries relationships because not everyone communicates this way. Some people need time to process their feelings before they can articulate them. Some people use indirect communication as a way to test the waters, to see how someone responds before fully committing to a position. Some people have been taught that being too direct is rude or aggressive, and when these communication styles collide with Aries' directness, it can feel like a car crash. But here's what I really want you to understand about Aries. Their honesty comes from a place of respect. They tell you the truth because they respect you enough to believe you can handle it. They don't sugarcoat things because they don't think you need to be protected from reality. They assume you're strong enough, capable enough, adult enough to hear the truth and deal with it. Does that make sense? In their mind, lying to someone or hiding the truth is actually more disrespectful because it implies you think they're too weak or too stupid to handle reality. The challenge for Aries is learning that not everyone experiences directness as respect. That some people need gentleness. That timing matters. That you can be honest without being brutal. And the Aries people who figure this out, who learn to pause for just a moment before they speak, who ask themselves not just is this true but is this necessary right now, they become incredibly effective communicators. because they maintain their authenticity. They maintain their directness. But they add a layer of emotional awareness that makes their honesty land better. If you're an Aries watching this, I want you to know that your honesty is brave. In a world where everyone is carefully curating their words, where people spend hours crafting the perfect text message, where authenticity is rare, your willingness to just say what's real is powerful. But your power increases when you recognize that other people's communication styles aren't wrong. They're just different. That someone who needs time to process isn't being dishonest. They're being thoughtful. That someone who speaks indirectly isn't being manipulative. They might just be protecting themselves. Now here's where things get really interesting. And this is something I've been thinking about a lot lately. These three signs, Sagittarius, Scorpio, and Aries, they don't just share a commitment to honesty. They share something deeper. They all have what I call an allergy to pretense. They physically cannot participate in social performances that feel fake. And in our current world, where so much of social interaction is performance, where we're all supposed to present these carefully curated versions of ourselves, these signs struggle. Think about it. We live in a time where people post their highlight reels on social media and call it their life, where everyone is fine even when they're falling apart, where we're expected to be professional, which often means suppressing our real reactions and feelings, where networking means pretending to be interested in people you don't care about, where dating involves strategic games of who texts first and who seems less interested. And for these three signs, all of this feels suffocating. Sagittarius looks at this landscape and wants to burn it all down. They want to post the real photos, the messy ones, the unflattering ones. They want to tell people at networking events that they're only there because they have to be. They want to text their crush immediately because playing hard to get feels dishonest. Scorpio looks at this landscape and withdraws. They'd rather be alone than participate in shallow interactions. They'd rather have 2 real friends than 50 fake ones. They'd rather be single than 8 people who are performing a role. Aries looks at this landscape and just barrels through it. They show up as themselves, completely unfiltered, and let the chips fall where they may. And all three of these approaches come with consequences. Sagittarius gets labeled as inappropriate, unprofessional, too much. Scorpio gets labeled as antisocial, difficult, intimidating. Aries gets labeled as aggressive, rude, lacking social skills. But here's what I think is actually happening. These signs are refusing to participate in collective dishonesty. They're refusing to pretend that surface-level interactions are meaningful. They're refusing to trade their authenticity for social acceptance. And that refusal, that's what makes people uncomfortable. Because when you're around someone who won't play the game, it forces you to look at your own participation in that game. When Sagittarius calls out the elephant in the room that everyone else is ignoring, it makes everyone else uncomfortable because they were all agreeing to ignore it. When Scorpio refuses to engage in small talk and wants to have real conversations, it highlights how much time everyone else spends avoiding real conversations. When Aries just says what they think without filtering it, it makes everyone else aware of how much they're filtering their own thoughts. These signs hold up a mirror, and sometimes what we see in that mirror isn't comfortable. We see our own dishonesty reflected back at us. We see the ways we've compromised our truth for comfort, for acceptance, for peace. We see how much energy we spend managing other people's perceptions of us. And that awareness can feel threatening. So instead of looking at ourselves, we label these signs as the problem. We say they need to learn to act, diplomacy, social skills. We say they're too intense, too honest, too much. But what if they're not too much? What if we're not enough? What if we've become so accustomed to dishonesty, to performance, to carefully managed interactions, that genuine authenticity feels foreign, uncomfortable? What if these signs aren't the ones who need to change? What if they're actually showing us what we've lost? I've been watching this play out in real time, and it's fascinating. The people who are most bothered by these signs' honesty are usually the people who are most invested in maintaining their own carefully constructed image. The people who get defensive when Sagittarius points out an uncomfortable truth are usually the people who've been avoiding that truth. The people who find Scorpio intimidating are usually the people who have something to hide. The people who think Aries is rude are usually the people who've been taught that politeness matters more than honesty. And here's what I find so powerful about this. These three signs are teaching us something crucial. They're teaching us that honesty isn't just about not lying. It's about living in alignment with your truth. It's about refusing to betray yourself for social acceptance. It's about valuing integrity over likability. And in a world that constantly pressures us to be someone we're not, to want things we don't want, to feel things we don't feel. That lesson is revolutionary. But let me be completely honest with you about something. Because I don't want to romanticize this too much. Living with this level of commitment to honesty is hard. It's lonely. It's exhausting. These signs lose opportunities because they won't play politics. They lose relationships because they won't pretend. They lose social capital because they won't perform. And sometimes, strange, right? In their most vulnerable moments, they wonder if it's worth it, if maybe everyone else has it figured out and they're the ones who are wrong. I've had Sagittarius friends tell me they wish they could just learn to keep their mouth shut. I've had Scorpio friends tell me they're tired of being seen as intimidating when they're just trying to have real connections. I've had Aries friends tell me they're exhausted from always being the one who has to be brave, who has to speak up, who has to break the silence. And my heart breaks for them because I know the cost they're paying. I know what they're sacrificing. But here's what I always tell them, and I really mean this. The world needs you exactly as you are. We need people who won't participate in collective delusion. We need people who will say the emperor has no clothes. We need people who value truth over comfort. Because without you, without your willingness to be honest even when it costs you, we'd all be lost in a fog of pleasant lies. We'd all be slowly suffocating under the weight of things we can't say, truths we can't acknowledge, realities we have to pretend don't exist. Your honesty is a service, even when people don't appreciate it in the moment, even when it makes you unpopular, even when it costs you. Because the truth you speak today might be the truth someone needs to hear to change their life. The boundary you set today might give someone else permission to set their own boundaries. The authenticity you model today might inspire someone else to stop performing and start being real. And here's something else I've noticed. The people who stick around, the people who can handle these signs' honesty, they're usually the best people. They're the ones who are also committed to growth, to truth, to authenticity. They're the ones who would rather have a difficult, honest conversation than a comfortable fake one. They're the ones who see these signs' honesty not as a flaw but as a gift. And the relationships these signs build with those people, they're deeper, more real, more meaningful than anything most people ever experience. I want to talk about something that I think is really important, and it's about what happens when these three signs meet each other. Because here's what I've observed, and it's absolutely fascinating. When Sagittarius, Scorpio, and Aries end up in the same space, whether it's a workplace, a friend group, or a family, something incredible happens. They recognize each other. They see in each other that same refusal to compromise on truth, and they form these bonds that are unlike anything else. I've watched a Sagittarius and a Scorpio become best friends. And it's beautiful because Sagittarius appreciates that Scorpio won't bullshit them. And Scorpio appreciates that Sagittarius won't play games. They can have these brutally honest conversations that would destroy most friendships. But for them, it's bonding. They're finally with someone who speaks their language. Someone who won't get offended when they point out hard truths. Someone who values authenticity as much as they do. I've seen Aries and Sagittarius in romantic relationships. And it's like watching two people who've been holding their breath their entire lives finally exhale. They can just be direct with each other. No hints. No games. No wondering what the other person is thinking. They say what they mean. They mean what they say. and they trust each other to handle the truth. The fights are explosive because neither of them holds back. But the making up is equally intense because they're both willing to admit when they're wrong. And when you get all three of these signs together, when you have Sagittarius, Scorpio, and Aries in the same room, it's like watching a truth bomb go off. They feed off each other's honesty. They push each other to be even more authentic. They create this space where pretense isn't just unnecessary, it's impossible. And everyone else in the room either loves it or runs away terrified. But here's what I really want you to understand about these dynamics. These signs don't just bond over their shared commitment to honesty. They also challenge each other in really important ways. Sagittarius teaches Scorpio that not everything needs to be so intense. That sometimes truth can be delivered with lightness and humor. Scorpio teaches Sagittarius that timing matters. That strategic honesty is sometimes more effective than blurting out every truth the moment you think it. Aries teaches both of them that overthinking honesty defeats the purpose. That sometimes you just need to speak and deal with the consequences later. And when these signs are in healthy relationships with each other, when they're not competing or trying to out-honest each other, they become this incredible force for truth in the world. They support each other through the loneliness that comes with being honest. They validate each other when the world tells them they're too much. They remind each other why their commitment to truth matters, especially on the days when it feels like it's costing them everything. Now I want to address something that I think is really important, and it's about the shadow side of this honesty. Because as much as I've been celebrating these signs' commitment to truth, I also need to be real about the ways this can go wrong. Because honesty without wisdom can be destructive. Truth without compassion can be cruel. And all three of these signs have the capacity to weaponize their honesty in ways that cause real harm. I've seen Sagittarius use their honesty as a shield, hiding behind the excuse of just being honest when really they're being hurtful. I've seen them deliver truths that didn't need to be said, that serve no purpose except to make themselves feel superior or to tear someone else down. I've seen them use their bluntness as a way to avoid taking responsibility for the impact of their words. "Oh, I'm just being honest" becomes a get-out-of-jail-free card for saying whatever they want without considering how it lands. I've seen Scorpio use their honesty as a weapon, exposing people's secrets not because truth needed to be told, but because they wanted revenge. I've seen them hold on to information, waiting for the perfect moment to use it to maximum devastating effect. I've seen them demand honesty from others while using their own truth strategically, creating this power dynamic where they know everything about you but you know nothing about them. And that's not honesty. That's manipulation dressed up as honesty. I've seen Aries use their honesty as a battering ram, bulldozing through other people's feelings and boundaries because they're too impatient to consider the impact of their words. I've seen them say incredibly hurtful things and then act surprised when people are hurt, as if their intention to be honest should somehow negate the damage they caused. I've seen them confuse honesty with emotional dumping, just vomiting out every thought and feeling without any filter or consideration for whether the other person is in a space to receive it. And this is where I think these signs need to do their deepest work. Because the question isn't just, are you being honest? The question is, why are you being honest? What's your motivation? Are you speaking truth because it needs to be spoken? Because it will help someone? Because it will create positive change? Or are you speaking truth because it makes you feel powerful? Because it lets you avoid your own discomfort? Because it allows you to control a situation or a person? Real honesty, the kind that actually serves the highest good, requires self-awareness. It requires you to examine your own motives. It requires you to ask yourself hard questions before you speak. Is this my truth to tell or someone else's? Is this the right time and place? Is this person in a state to receive this information? Am I delivering this truth in a way that gives them the best chance of actually hearing it and integrating it? Or am I just dumping my truth on them and walking away, leaving them to deal with the wreckage? I think this is the evolution these signs are being called toward. Not to compromise on honesty, but to elevate their honesty. To move from reactive truth-telling to conscious truth-telling. To understand that being honest isn't just about what you say. It's about how you say it, when you say it, and why you say it. And that sometimes, the most honest thing you can do is stay silent, not because you're hiding the truth, but because you recognize that speaking it in this moment, in this way, won't serve anyone. Let me share something personal with you. I have strong placements in all three of these signs in my chart, and I've had to learn this lesson the hard way. I've lost friendships because I said true things at the wrong time. I've hurt people I loved because I prioritized being right over being kind. I've used my honesty as a weapon when I was angry, as a shield when I was scared, as a way to maintain control when I felt powerless. And I've had to sit with the consequences of that. I've had to look at the damage I caused and admit that just because something is true doesn't mean I had the right to say it the way I said it. And here's what I learned. The most powerful honesty is the honesty that comes from a place of love. Not love in the sense of making people feel good or telling them what they want to hear, but love in the sense of genuinely wanting what's best for them. When you speak truth from that place, when your honesty is in service of someone's growth rather than your own need to be right, it lands differently. People can feel the difference. They can feel when you're speaking truth to help them versus speaking truth to hurt them or elevate yourself. This is what I want these three signs to understand. Your honesty is a gift, but like any gift, it needs to be given with care. You wouldn't throw a precious object at someone and expect them to catch it. You'd hand it to them carefully, making sure they're ready to receive it. Truth is the same way. It's precious, it's valuable, it's necessary, but it needs to be delivered with intention, with timing, with awareness of the person receiving it. And here's something else I've been thinking about. These signs' commitment to honesty isn't just about speaking truth to others. It's also about being honest with themselves. And I think this is where the real work is. Because it's easy to call out other people's lies. It's much harder to acknowledge your own. It's easy to demand honesty from others. It's much harder to be brutally honest with yourself about your own patterns, your own shadows, your own ways of avoiding truth. Sanctirities. Are you being honest with yourself about why you need to be right all the time? About why you can't just let some things go? About whether your truth-telling is really about helping others or about maintaining your sense of superiority? Scorpio. Are you being honest with yourself about why you need so much control? About why you can't trust people? About whether your demand for honesty from others is really about truth or about power? Are you being honest with yourself about why you're so impatient? About why you can't sit with discomfort? About whether your directness is really about authenticity or about avoiding the complexity of real emotional intimacy? These are hard questions, and I'm not asking them to tear these signs down. I'm asking them because I believe these signs are capable of this level of self-honesty. I believe they can turn that same unflinching gaze they direct at the world inward. And when they do, when they're as honest with themselves as they are with everyone else, that's when they become truly powerful. That's when their honesty stops being a weapon or a shield and becomes a tool for genuine transformation. I want to end with this, and I really mean it from the bottom of my heart. If you're one of these three signs, if you recognize yourself in what I've been describing, I want you to know that your honesty matters. In a world that's drowning in performance and pretense, in a culture that rewards people for saying what's popular rather than what's true, in a time when everyone is so afraid of being cancelled or judged that they've stopped saying anything real at all, your willingness to speak truth is revolutionary. But I also want you to know that you don't have to carry this burden alone. You don't have to be the only one telling the truth. You don't have to sacrifice every relationship, every opportunity, every moment of peace for the sake of honesty. You can be honest and strategic. You can be truthful and kind. You can maintain your integrity while also developing emotional intelligence. These things aren't mutually exclusive. And to everyone else, to the people who have these signs in their lives, I want you to understand something. When a Sanctirities tells you a hard truth, when a Scorpio demands honesty from you, when an Aries is direct with you in a way that feels uncomfortable, they're not trying to hurt you, they're trying to help you. They're offering you something rare and valuable. A mirror that shows you reality instead of the filtered version you've been looking at. And yes, sometimes what you see in that mirror isn't pretty. Sometimes it's painful. Sometimes you wish they just let you keep your comfortable illusions. But here's the thing. Those illusions were never serving you. That comfortable lie was never going to lead you anywhere good. That truth you were avoiding was never going to go away just because you refused to look at it. And these signs, with all their bluntness and intensity and refusal to play along, they're doing you a favor. They're showing you what you need to see so you can make better choices. Grow into a better version of yourself. Build a life based on reality instead of fantasy. So instead of getting defensive, instead of labeling them as too much or too harsh or too intense, what if you just listened? What if you considered that maybe, just maybe, they're seeing something you're missing? What if you trusted that their honesty, even when it's uncomfortable, is coming from a place of respect? Because they believe you're strong enough to handle the truth. They believe you're capable of growth. They believe you deserve to live in reality instead of delusion. The world needs more honesty, not less. We need more people willing to speak truth even when it costs them. We need more people who value integrity over likability. We need more people who refuse to participate in collective dishonesty and sanctarities. Scorpio and Aries. These three signs are leading the way. They're showing us what it looks like to live in radical authenticity. They're modeling a different way of being in the world. One where truth matters more than comfort. Where honesty matters more than approval. Where being real matters more than being liked. And yes, they pay a price for it. Yes, they lose people and opportunities and moments of peace. Yes, they sometimes wonder if it's worth it, but I believe it is. I believe their honesty is changing the world in ways they can't even see. Every time they speak a truth that needed to be spoken, they give someone else permission to do the same. Every time they refuse to participate in a lie, they weaken the hold that lie has on all of us.